Hi, welcome to Budget MTG Decks. All magic fun, all cards under $1. I'm David, this is my homie Ruud.
Hey everybody, today we're going to talk about a fun and effective EDH deck you can build without breaking the bank. As with our decks, we have one additional build rule, and it is that all cards need to be under $1 in price, with the exception of the commander. Now today's commander is going to blink a lot of creatures with big enter the battlefield abilities. So let's take a look at the commander.
Yeah, and we have a doozy of a commander for you today. We have Brago King Eternal for 4 mana. We get a 2/4 flyer. On top of that, and this is the awesome ability that Brago brings to the table, is whenever he deals combat damage to opponent, you can exile any number of target non-land permanents you control and then immediately return them back to the battlefield under their owner's control. It's going to be your stuff. So the role of this commander is going to be to blink permanents and have your permanents enter the battlefield abilities trigger multiple times, and that's going to give you a lot of benefit. So what kind of cards do we need to make this work?
We have 17 tempo cards, which basically means mana ramp, a lot of mana stones. We have 18 removal cards, so enter the battlefield abilities with removal attached to them. 16 utility cards, just some big enter the battlefield abilities we couldn't categorize otherwise. 9 blink cards, so additional cards that blink one time. And of course 39 land cards.
Yeah, so let's have a look at the ideal turn progression.
Yeah, turn 1 we won't do anything. Well, we don't have anything that's worth doing for 1 mana in this deck. Turn 2 we would like some mana ramp, so a mana stone. Turn 3 we would like to cast the commander, in the ideal scenario of course. Turn 4 we would like to put some protection on Brago because he's very important to our deck. And then turn 5 we would like to put down some draw, so a big creature with a draw, enter the battlefield ability. And then turn 6 onward, removal spells and maybe some other utility enter the battlefield abilities.
Yeah, so that's ideal scenario. We're going to be going, ramping up into Brago, then making sure we get a lot of benefit from all our permanents that they blink in and out. So let's have a look at the cards that give us a lot of that tempo first. We divided the tempo cards into mana ramp cards and card draw cards. Now the mana ramp cards are basically like mana stones that come in, they're very cheap, allow us to ramp into Brago, then later on in the game they can be used for mana before our combat phase, then we can attack with Brago, blink it, and then use it again as they come in untapped. First card is Talisman of Progress for 2 mana and can give us colorless mana. On top of that, it can also give us either a white or a blue mana, but then it does deal a point of damage to us.
Then we have a Mind Stone. For 2 mana you get an artifact which can tap for 1 colorless mana. In addition to that, later on in the game when you don't need the additional mana anymore, you can sacrifice it for 1 mana and draw a card.
Pretty sweet. Prismatic Lens also comes in for 2 mana, gives us a colorless mana, but we can also convert mana from 1 color to any other color with this.
Then we have Azorius Signet. For 2 mana we get an artifact which can tap for 1 mana and gives us 2 mana. Specifically a white and a blue mana.
Yeah, very good. Azorius Cluestone comes in for 3 mana, a little bit more expensive. Can also gives us either a white or a blue mana. In addition to that, we can pay 2 mana, tap it, sacrifice, and draw a card later on in the game. That's nice.
Yeah. Then we have the Azorius Key Room. For 3 mana we get an artifact which can tap for either a white or a blue mana, and it could become a creature later on in the game for 2 mana. It will be a 2/2 flying creature.
Yeah, don't use that. We don't use that very often, mostly just for the mana. Seashell Cameo also comes in for 3 mana, and it can give us either a white or a blue.
Then we have Basalt Monolith. For 3 mana you get an artifact which can tap for 3 mana, but it doesn't untap during your untap phase. So you need to untap it with Brago, which will be of course ideal, and it could be possible to untap it for 3 mana, but you won't be doing that.
No, pretty much you just pop it in, 3 mana, you attack with Brago, blink it, and then you get another 3 mana. It does a lot of work, this card. Then we get one of my favorites, Cloud of Fairies for 2 mana. It's a 1/1 flyer, comes in, untaps 2 lands, so the lands you use to cast, and on top of that, every turn that Brago attacks and deals damage, you're going to be blinking this guy and then getting your 2 lands back again, which you can use for mana. Pretty sweet.
It also has cycling for 2. You could discard it when it's in your hand and draw another card if you would like so.
Exactly. Usually you just hold on to your Cloud of Fairies. Does a lot of work.
Then we have the Peregrine Drake for 5 mana. It's a 2/3 flyer, and when it enters you untap 5 lands. So when you attack with Brago, each time you untap 5 lands, which is pretty big.
That's so good, so good. Then we go to the card draw cards. These are going to be cards that come in, they allow you to draw a card, and then on top of that you can blink them with Brago every turn, and then we can draw another card. So they give us a lot of card advantage. First one is Spreading Seas for 2 mana. It's an enchantment that turns a land into an island, which is nice for us if we want to fix our mana. Or it's also nice to cast on our opponent's land in case they they really want that swamp, and then we turn it into an island. The best thing about it is that when it comes in, you get to draw a card. So every turn we're going to be blinking it with Brago, and we're going to be drawing an extra card.
Then we have Ichor Wellspring for 2 mana. When it enters the battlefield you draw a card. It also does this when it goes to the graveyard, but mostly that won't happen.
Yeah, kind of like a Mycosynth Wellspring, which is also for 2 mana. It's pretty much the same, except this one allows you to search for a basic land card and then put it into your hand.
Then we have Prophetic Prison for 2 mana. When it enters the battlefield you draw a card. It also has the ability to convert colorless mana into mana of any color.
Yeah, we don't use it that often. Nice to have the ability, mostly just nice that it comes in so early and it allows us to draw a card. Then we have a great card, Mold Drifter for 5 mana. It's a 2/2 flyer. That's not as interesting as the fact that when it comes in you get to draw 2 cards, and every time we blink this guy we're going to be drawing 2 cards, which is massive. It also has Evoke.
Evoke means you could cast it for its Evoke cost, which is lower, it's 3 mana. And if you do this, it just enters the battlefield and you have to sacrifice it right away. So it just draws you 2 cards. If it's really needed, maybe you need a land, could be done, but mostly we really don't want this.
No, exactly. Then we go to Heliod's Pilgrim for 3 mana. We get a 1/2, and when Heliod Pilgrim enters the battlefield, we can search for an aura card, reveal it, and then put it into our hand. Usually we're going to be looking for a card that is going to be protecting Brago, and one of the best cards for that is Spectral Ward, which we'll be getting to later on.
Then we have difficult name, Kaho Minamo Historian for 4 mana, of which 2 blue. It comes into play, you search your library for up to 3 instant cards and remove them from the game. Then you can shuffle your library, but, which is nice about this card, you can pay X later on in the game. You may play a card exiled with Kaho, and then you may cast this card.
Yeah. The great thing about this card is basically you pop it onto the table, you search for one of your instants which allow you to blink permanents, usually creatures, and you just pop it underneath this guy, and then every turn it basically allows you to blink an extra permanent, which is super sweet. That's how we're going to be wrapping in, that's how we're going to be getting a lot of cards. However, there are times when people get in your grill and they get really annoying and they start putting out stuff which really hinders Brago from being able to do damage in a carefree way, which is what Brago really wants to do. So for that we need some removal. So let's have a look at the removal cards. We've divided the removal cards into cards that can either remove creatures or other kinds of permanents. Now, pretty much all of our removal spells are going to be permanents themselves, so that we can blink them and remove things multiple times with Brago. We're going to start with the creature removal spells. First we have Journey to Nowhere. For 2 mana we have an enchantment. When he enters the battlefield we get to exile target creature. However, when Journey to Nowhere leaves the battlefield you have to return the exiled card back to the battlefield under its owner's control.
Yeah, so this can basically only exile 1 creature at a time, but it can be a different creature each turn.
Yeah, so what you want to be using this mostly for is to target your opponent's commanders, because it comes in, it exiles the commander, then they can choose to have their commander go to the exile zone instead, which means that then the card already has exiled something and it won't return that commander back again later on. So next time another commander comes with that same one, you can again blink Journey to Nowhere, and then you can again target a commander. So it's really good for that. Then we have Man o' War for 3 mana. We get a 2/2. When he enters play, you get to return target creature to its owner's hand.
Pretty simple. Just like the Aether Adept, does the same thing. Also 3 mana, but this time 2 blue mana.
Yeah, very nice. Nevermaker for 4 mana is a 2/3 flyer. Pretty sweet. And when Nevermaker leaves play, so not when he enters play, so that's important to remember, you can put target non-land permanent on top of its owner's library. This card does crazy work. This is one of the best cards to be able to blink.
Yeah, it also has Evoke, just like the Muldrifter, But of course this time it's not an enter the battlefield ability, but a leave the battlefield ability.
Yeah, then we have Valdakan Dismisser for 6 mana. We get a 2/2, very small little guy. That's not why we have him. We have him because when Valdakan Dismisser enters the battlefield, you get to put target creature on top of its owner's library. Ugh, that slows people down so much.
Yeah. This time, of course, it isn't enter the battlefield ability, but it also costs 6 mana. It's a little bit quicker. You could, of course, put a flying creature on top of his owner's library so Brago can get through. This may be nice.
And then when Brago got through, you get to blink this guy again, and then you get to put another card on top of the card you already put on top of their library before. Needless to say, that's game-winning stuff.
It is. Then we have the Sunblast Angel for 6 mana. It's a 4/5 flyer, so pretty big dude. But when it enters the battlefield, destroy all tapped creatures. So basically, each turn, whatever is tapped, you destroy this.
Yeah, and it's
annoying.
And it's never going to hinder you because you're going to be blinking it in your turn. So you're going to be making sure that your guys are not going to be tapped because you're going to keep them untapped, obviously. So that's great. Then we go to Quarry Colossus for 7 mana. We get a 5/6 guy, pretty damn big. And then on top of that, when Quarry Colossus enters the battlefield, you can put target creature on top of its owner's library, but you just put it just beneath the top X cards, where X is the number of planes you control. So it's not a tuck ability per se. I mean, it tucks it, but it doesn't shuffle your library. So they will get, if you target the commander, they will get their commander again, but it slows them down because, you know, if you have 3 planes out, for example, then it's like going to take them a couple of turns to get it.
Still pretty nasty to put
Really.
a commander there.
But it's also a very expensive spell. Then we go to Luminate Primordial for 7 mana. We get a 4/7 Vigilance. This guy's got a really big butt. He's going to be doing a lot of blocking, and with the Vigilance, going to be doing good attacking. On top of that, when Luminate Primordial enters the battlefield, for each opponent, you get to exile target creature that player controls. They do gain life equal to its power. But, you know, you just exile everybody's commander if you want.
Yeah, pretty extreme, of course, especially if you put it down before Brago attacks. You exile multiple creatures, then Brago attacks, you blink it, you exile multiple creatures again. That's game winning.
Yeah, pretty much all these spells that we're going to be talking about today, you're always going to be casting them in your first main phase so that you benefited them one time, and then after Brago blinks them, you get a benefit a second time. Phyrexian Ingester for 7 mana gives us a 3/3 with Imprint, and Imprint states that when he enters the battlefield, you get to exile target non-token creature, so just anyone on the battlefield, not necessarily yours. Preferably your opponent's, because then he gets +X/+Y, where X was the creature's power, Y was its toughness. The beauty of it is, of course, this creature is basically going to be eating all your opponent's creatures.
Yeah, this is of course huge, pretty annoying. Well, a little bit of a weird card with the Y in it, but well, very, very big.
Don't ask why, just enjoy it. Just enjoy it. It's a wonderful card. Then we go to Scourge of Fleets for 7 mana, gives us a 6/6, also pretty big fatty, good to hit with, but when he enters the battlefield, return each creature your opponents control with toughness X or less, where X is the amount of islands you control. So every turn, basically, you're going to be returning most of the creatures of your opponents back to their hand, which is pretty sick.
You only leave them with some big stuff, which you can, of course, exile or destroy with your other enter the battlefield
Yeah,
cards.
so you got Scourge of Fleets, and you got your Luminate Primordial and Brago, and then that's all you need to win the game, pretty much. Alright, then we move on to the cards that remove other kinds of permanents, gives us a little bit more flexibility. First is Oblivion Ring for 3 mana. When Oblivion Ringer enters the battlefield, exile target non-land permanent. However, it's the same as the other spell, Journey to Nowhere, in the sense that when this card leaves play, you have to return that card back to the battlefield.
Then we have Detention Sphere, also for 3 mana, and that's basically the same as the Oblivion Ring, only you exile all cards with the same name, so maybe you can remove a lot of tokens with it.
Very sweet, a lot of flexibility. Then we go to one of my favorite removal cards in this deck, and that is Reality Acid for 3 mana. It's an enchantment. You can enchant any permanent, anything, you know, land as well, a creature, enchantment, whatever you want. It has Vanishing 3, which means that the permanent, when it comes into play, comes in with 3 vanishing counters, and at the beginning of your upkeep, return 1. When the last one leaves, this card leaves play. The beauty of it is when this card leaves play, its controller has to sacrifice it. But of course, the beauty of it is that Brago attacks, you blink this, it leaves play, you can pop it on something else. The opponent has to sacrifice that permanent, which was enchanted, and knows that the next card on which it's enchanted is going to be sacrificed later on. So every turn you're going to be sacrificing any permanent, and it doesn't even matter if the creature's indestructible, regenerate, it doesn't matter because the opponent has to sacrifice it.
Yeah, so it enters each turn with 3 vanishing counters. And there's one additional thing that's important to know about this card. It's actually kind of a rule glitch, I think. When it enters the battlefield again, it doesn't target. So you could, well, no, not target, but you could put it on a creature with hexproof. Or another permanent, of course, with hexproof, which is very, very annoying.
Yeah, so the first time you can't do that because then you are targeting because that's part of the casting the spell. However, every turn later when you blink it with Brago, you can just attach it, which is a, well, yeah, as you said, it's kind of a rules glitch, but it is possible your creatures, your opponent's creatures with Shroud and hexproof are still fair game.
He used this on my Lazav multiple times. I don't
exactly.
Like it.
Then we go to Riftwing Cloudskate for 5 mana. We get a 2/2 flyer, and when this guy enters the battlefield, return target permanent to its owner's hand. Not too bad.
Pretty nice. Then we have Rishadan Brigand for 5 mana, a 3/2 flyer. When it comes into play, each opponent sacrifices a permanent unless he or she pays 3 colorless mana.
Yeah, it basically means it starts as a surprise because people are not expecting this. So people may be mad at times, especially at the beginning of the game. They're going to have to be sacrificing stuff because they won't have 3 mana open. And probably if you got Brago, they have to do that twice that turn. First when you first cast it, and later on when you blink them again. And then every turn after that, people are going to have to leave 3 mana open, which is going to slow them down like crazy. Then we go to Lavinia of the 10th, also super powerful card for 5 mana. We get a 4/4 with protection from red. And when Lavinia the 10th enters the battlefield, detain each non-land permanent your opponent's control, so not yours, with converted mana cost 4 or less, which means that all their mana rocks, all their small blockers, all of that stuff, they can't use that anymore until it's your turn. And the problem is when it's your turn, you're going to be blinking them again.
Yeah, so this is of course crazy. You do it each turn, they can't use anything which is 4 or less mana.
Game winning. Then we go to Exclusion Ritual for 6 mana. It's a pretty expensive enchantment which has imprint. When it enters the battlefield, you can exile target non-land permanent. And players can't cast spells with the same name as the exile card. So this card comes in, you exile any non-land permanent, and you're going to be blinking it, doing it over and over again, which is great. What's also important to remember is that if you exile a card, let's say somebody's commander, you might say, okay, you can't cast that spell anymore, but once people say this commander goes back to a command zone, then this card doesn't remember that it had that commander anymore, so they can recast it.
Exactly. Well, it's also important to know that unlike the Oblivion Ring, the Detention Sphere, that kind of cards, when this leaves play, the card stays exiled.
Yeah. So you can just target just regular creatures, not so focused on commanders, for example. Then we go to Spine of Ish-Sa for 7 mana, super versatile. When it enters the battlefield, destroy target permanent. Period. You get to blank this, you're just destroying permanents left and right, and on top of that, if should it be destroyed and put into the graveyard, you can just put it back into your hand.
Yeah, just crazy.
Yeah. So now you see also why we have so much mana acceleration, mana ramp, because we have a lot of quite expensive removal cards. We want to get into that, we want to be able to reach them very quickly, and then once we have them, everything starts blowing up left and right. Well, those are the removal cards, and we have some more cards which actually help us with our synergy. So let's have a look at the utility cards. We divided the utility cards into tool cards. These are cards that give us a nice little ability, cards that give us tokens, and cards that protect Brago. We're going to start with tools. First one is Stonehorn Dignitary for 4 mana. We get a 1/4 guy, and when he enters the battlefield, target opponent has to skip their next combat phase. Needless to say, if you're playing this one-on-one, it's absolutely sick. You can just block somebody out of the game completely. But for multiplayer, it's a nice and fair card.
Yeah, then we have Custody Squire. For 5 mana you get a 3/3 flyer, and its enter battlefield ability has Will of the Council, which basically means each player gets to vote, starting with you. In this case, a card in your graveyard, and the card with the most votes will get returned to your hand. And you can only vote for an artifact, creature, or enchantment card, but that's all we need.
Either way, you're going to get some really sweet stuff back. Then we go to Diluvian Primordial for 7 mana. We get a 5/5 flyer, pretty decent already. On top of that, when he enters the battlefield, for each opponent, you get to cast target instant sorcery from their graveyard without paying the mana cost. The card does get exiled afterwards, so you can't keep on casting the same spell, but still, enters the battlefield, you're going to start doing a lot of damage.
Then we have the Resolute Archangel. For 7 mana you get a 4/4 flyer, and it has a pretty simple enter the battlefield ability, but also pretty powerful. When it enters, your life total becomes equal to your starting life total. So in Commander this is 40 life. Pretty annoying when your opponent does get you down to below 10 or something and you just get back to 40.
Yeah, or if your opponent is able to do 39 points of damage every turn and you get to blink this guy, you go back up to 40.
That's not really...
Then we go to Decree of Silence for 8 mana. We get a very expensive enchantment, but it states that whenever an opponent plays a spell, you get to you just counter that spell, and you get to put down you have to put down a depletion counter on it, and then when you have 3 depletion counter on it, you have to sacrifice this enchantment. So basically what happens is your opponents, before it's your turn again, they have to cast 3 spells, and those spells are all countered for you to lose this thing, because as soon as it's your turn again, you get to blink it with Brago if you can, and then all the depletion counters are gone. So it's, yeah, people have to actually start banding together to be able to cast anything at all anymore.
Yeah, so this is pretty annoying. The card also has cycling for 6, and it's pretty steep. Well, cycling of course means you get to draw a card and discard this one, but when you cycle this card, you can counter target spell, and you can cycle it, of course, as an instant.
Yeah, you're not really going to use it that often. Then we go to Metamai the Ageless for 6 mana. We get a 4/4 flyer, and when Metamai the Ageless deals combat damage to a player, take an extra turn after this one. So it's not just a combat turn, it's a full extra turn, which is sick. He won't be able to attack in subsequent free turns, so you actually really only get that 1 free turn. But naturally, Brago is going to be attacking with this guy, so you're going to be able to trigger Brago's cool stuff twice.
Crazy stuff.
We go to the last one, Strionic Resonator for 2 mana. It allows us to pay 2 mana, tap it, and then copy target triggered ability. So for example, if a card comes in and it says, when this card comes in, destroy target permanent, then you can pay 2, tap it, and then you can do it again. You cannot do this on the triggered ability of Brago, because when Brago's ability triggers, you are going to exile all these non-land permanents, and then the Strionic Resonator would allow you to do that again, but since everything is gone, you can't retarget everything again, so yeah, so you're going to have to use it on an individual item.
Then we go to the token cards. First off we have Spirit Bonds for 2 mana. It's an enchantment, and whenever a creature enters the battlefield, a non-token creature of course, you can pay an additional white mana, and you may put down a 1/1 white spirit creature token with flying onto the battlefield, which of course is pretty nice. It also has an additional ability. For 2 mana you can sacrifice a spirit, and then target non-spirit creature gains indestructible until end of turn. But Brago is a spirit, so it won't work on Brago.
Yeah, but it will work on any of the other creatures you have, and on top of that, you're going to be blinking a lot of creatures, which means every time you can pay a white mana, and then you're going to be getting loads of little 1/1 flyers. Then we go to Geist Honored Monk for 5 mana. We get a Vigilance guy that comes in with 2 white spirit tokens. On top of that, his power and toughness is equal to the amount of creatures you control. It's not going to be super massive, we don't have loads and loads of creatures, but the beauty of it, of course, is every time you blink Geist Honored Monk, you're going to get another 2 flying 1/1s.
Yeah, pretty annoying. Then we have Urbis Protector for 6 mana. It's a 1/1 creature. When it enters, you get to put down a 4/4 Angel creature token with flying.
Yeah, that gets out of control real quick. Cast it before combat, you get a 4/4. Brago attacks, deals damage, you get another 4/4, and then next turn you're going to get another 4/4 and another 4/4, and then yeah, that's going to be a lot of flying power right there. Then we move on to the protection cards. We have Traveler's Cloak for 3 mana. First of all, it's very important to note that the reason why we have the protection cards, not only so that Brago doesn't get removed a lot of time, but also so you can just get through and do that damage so that we can blink all our permanents. And this spell is going to help us with that, because when it enters the battlefield, you can choose a land type. Then enchanted creature has land walk of that land type, so you just pick somebody, say swamp, and then he's going to be able to attack that person with impunity. On top of that, when it enters the battlefield, you get to draw a card. So should you want to, you can also blink this enchantment every single time. Very important to remember is if this enchantment is on Brago, and you do blink it to be able to get that extra card, you can't put it back on top of Brago if Brago also blinked.
Yeah, so well, what you're saying is you can put it on a creature you also exiled and returned. Because they enter at the same time.
Exactly, that's actually way clearer. Thanks for that.
Thanks.
Then we go to Unquestioned Authority for 3 mana. You get to enchant a creature, and you get to draw a card when it comes in, same as the Traveler's Cloak. On top of that, it has enchanted creature has protection from creatures, so it also allows you to attack everybody with impunity.
Unblockable. Nice.
Yeah. Then we go to Pentarch Ward for 3 mana. You get enchanted creature. When it comes in, you get to draw a card as well. So all these enchantments, very important to remember. It's also very nice to just be blinking them as well if we want to be drawing cards. And it also states that you can choose a color when it comes in, and the enchanted creature has protection from that color.
Yeah, very nice. Of course, it's important to choose a color which could remove Brago. That's maybe the best, but of course also to make him unblockable against that color, of course. Then we have a Spectra Ward, which is, I think, probably the best enchantment which protects Brago. For 5 mana we can enchant him, he gets +2/+2, and he has protection from all colors, and this does not remove auras. So, well, he's basically, well, you can remove him only maybe by something like a Wrath effect, or, well, I think nobody will have colorless removal.
No.
But, well, it's just a great card.
You have Ghost Flame, that is colorless, but it's also does 3 points of damage. It wouldn't even be color remove it. Nah. Pretty much, Spectral Ward comes on Brago, he's going to be doing damage, he's going to be getting through, he's not going to be removed, and you're going to be winning the game. Come down to it. Drog Skull Captain for 3 mana is a 2/2 little flying spirit soldier. On top of that, other spirits you control get +1/+1. Nice for Brago because he's a spirit. Better yet, other spirits also have hexproof, which is great for making sure that Brago stays safe.
Exactly. Then we have Cloud Cover. For 4 mana we get an enchantment, and it states that whenever a permanent you control becomes a target of a spell or ability, you may return it to its owner's hand. So this basically means, well, of course, when Brago goes to the command zone, his casting cost goes up, but with this you can just put it in your hand and he will stay 4 mana.
Yeah, and people are going to be wanting to remove all other kinds of enchantments and artifacts and creatures that you have, and then if this is out, you can just say, oh, it's okay, I'll just take it back to my hand and cast it next turn. Well, those are the utility cards. What's also very nice is, of course, Brago blinks stuff every single turn, but sometimes you want to blink things multiple times, and on top of that, sometimes you might want to blink Brago at instant speed to protect him from something when you don't have the protection cards. So let's have a look at the blink cards. The first blink spell is Cloud Shift. For just 1 white mana, we get to exile target creature you control and return it back to the battlefield under your control. It's great to dodge a targeted removal effect, like murder, for example. Somebody targets Brago with murder, you cast this, gets out of the way, comes back, he's safe. However, it won't allow you to avoid any wrath effects, because the wrath effect will still take effect after it comes back onto the battlefield.
Exactly. Then we have Liberate for 2 mana. Also an instant, you remove a creature you control, and then at end of turn you put it into play again. Which of course does protect you from a Wrath effect, because the Wrath effect will already have resolved.
Yeah, with these kind of spells, it's very important to remember that usually we're going to be saving it in our hand to protect Brago from targeted removal, or in this case, for example, like say a Wrath effect. However, sometimes when push comes to shove, we might want to use it on one of the creatures that have very nice enter the battlefield ability. Just give us an extra one of those triggers. Now we go to Momentary Blink for 2 mana, remove target creature you control from the game, then return it to play under owner's control. The good thing about this spell is that it has flashback for 4 mana, so we can cast it 1 more time for our graveyard.
Exactly. Then we have Turn to Mist for 2 mana, remove a creature from the game, and then return it to play at the end of turn. So you can target any creature, but mostly Brago.
Exactly. You could use this one, for example, when you want to attack with Brago, but they have 1 flyer that's going to block you. You can use it to turn it to Mist. You attack with Brago, and then it comes back later. Then we have Flicker for 2 mana, remove target non-token permanent from the game, then return it to play under its owner's control. So that's very similar to Turn to Mist.
Pretty simple. Then we have Otherworldly Journey. For 2 mana, you exile a creature, and at the beginning of the next end step, you return it to play, but this time with a +1/+1 counter on it.
Yeah, it's really nice. It's really annoying when people target Brago and they're like, well, you kill it, and you go, no, he's safe, and on top of that, he's now a 3/5. Yeah, pretty sweet. We go to Ghostly Flicker for 3 mana. This one actually allows us to exile 2 target artifact, creatures, and or lands you control. It's pretty nice. You can use the lands as well to get the extra mana you need. Then return them to the battlefield under your control. This one has great versatility. You can use it to protect Brago, and on top of that, you might be able to get another into the battlefield trigger off another one of your creatures.
Then we have Conjurer's Closet. For 5 mana we get an artifact. This doesn't protect your stuff, but it actually gives you another enter the battlefield ability each turn. Because at the beginning of your end step you exile a creature and return into play under your control.
Every turn an extra trigger for one of your awesome creatures. Then we go to Deadeye Navigator for 6 mana. We get a 5/5 with Soul Bond, and the beauty of it is if you Soul Bond this guy with, for example, Brago, then both creatures have pay 2 mana, and then exile this creature, return to the battlefield under your control. So that means that you basically can protect Brago for 2 mana at any point in time, as long as Deadeye Navigator is soul bonded to him.
Exactly.
Pretty sweet. Well, those are the Blink cards, and as usual, we're going to have a hard time casting these if we don't have the proper lands to cast them. So let's have a look at the lands. We divided the lands into 16 plains, 15 islands, and 8 non-basic lands. To start off, we have Azorius Guildgate, Coastal Tower, and Boreal Shelf. All come in tapped, all give us either white or blue mana. Pretty nice.
Then we have the Sajiri Refuge and the Tranquil Cove. Do the same as the first 3 lands we discussed, only this time when they enter you also gain a life.
Yeah, then we go Azorius Chancery. It gives us both a white and a blue, however it comes in tapped, and when it comes in you have to return a land you control back to your hand. The good thing is, of course, you can return a hand that you just tap for mana, so it doesn't slow you down that much.
Then we have Terramorphic Expanse and Evolving Wilds. Both lands can be sacrificed immediately to choose a basic land from your library and put it into play tapped.
Pretty nice. Well, those are all the lands that we have, so let's have a look at the conclusion. In conclusion, this deck is a lot of fun, and I'm not just saying that. I mean, when Brago's on the table, you get all your little toys out. You attack. The basic playstyle is as follows. I attack, okay, I do 2 points of damage. Now, I blank this one. You lose that guy. I blank this one. This guy goes back to your hand. I blink this guy. Okay, that guy goes also back to your hand. This one goes on top of your library. This guy dies. You remove that guy. That guy's exiled. Okay, your turn. That is a lot of fun, and the worst thing is that people may not like you too much for that.
Very annoying,
especially
yeah.
if you do that every single turn, and it could be there's multiple cards that return cards to the top of the library, and if you do that 2 or 3 times, and especially if you do it to a land or something, don't recommend doing it. Just don't do it to lands, because it's just, I did it once, it's just not fun, because you just pop all the lands on top of people's library. It's no fun, but just putting creatures back on top, slowing them down, you can really control a 4-player commander game with just Brago out and a couple of your favorite toys.
Yeah, finally he has a deck he can win with against me.
That is true. That's true.
Well,
You gotta.
what you just said, it is a little bit of a lockdown. There are a lot of ways that locks the game for your opponent. So you need a play group that can handle this. It might not be that fun to play with beginners or people you're trying to learn how to play Commander, because, well, like I said, it locks down the game and mostly it doesn't deal that much damage. So it's not designed especially to win the game, but it makes the other players not able to win the game. So you can win slowly, or they have to say, okay, let's stop it, you won.
I think that's a very valid way to win.
It's true,
If
yeah,
people,
it's valid,
if people
of course.
scoop because they say, you're just so powerful, I must leave not only this battlefield, but also your place of residence, I think you've done probably something right in that case with your deck. No, but seriously, it is a lot of fun. You get a lot of, there's a lot of different kind of mechanics that go on with the game that this deck can do, and if you play it right, you're going to be winning very well. But it's not invincible, and as Ruud already said, there's some parts, if you can't attack, if you can't do damage, if somebody removes Brago, if somebody counters Brago, yeah, you're going to have a hard time. So this is not a beginner's deck.
No, it's definitely not a beginner's deck. It is, of course, a very nice deck to play, like David said. But well, you have to take into account a few things, I think. But it's a very valid way to win with the opponent scooping.
Yeah, with great power comes great responsibility. So use this deck with caution. And not only that, but it's also quite affordable, right?
Yeah, it's just below $27, the whole deck, including the lands and the commander. And we did this calculation on magiccards.info, and we used all the medium prices. So you can really buy this deck pretty easily, so it's very nice.
Yeah, you can also check out the deck list below, over here in the description. Now what we're going to ask you is to please press on that subscribe button, because if you press on it, we can make more videos and lets us know that we're doing a good job. On top of that, it gives us new energy. Kind of that button is linked to us psychically, and we get new juices and new energies to be able to create even more powerful, more fun budget decks. So please subscribe to us, and we'll be able to get on that and make some really cool videos for you. Ruud, do we have a question of the day?
Yeah, the question of the day is, when it comes to Blink commanders, who is better? Our beloved Brago, King Eternal, or Rune of the Hidden Realm? The Hidden Realm, of course. And why is that? You can leave your answers below the comments.
Yeah, let us know what you think. And on top of that, thanks for watching. I'm David.
And I'm Ruud.
This was Budget MTG Decks.